Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1103, 1103, April the 15th, 2020, Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, of course it is Wednesday, so as I always do on Wednesdays, I'll be having some chicken and taking out the trash. Having chicken and taking out the trash. I do it every Wednesday. And now I'm sure a lot of you do as well. Well, you probably have some chicken. You know, you probably still take out your trash on the regular trash night. And hopefully we'll all remember to do that. Now, let's go ahead and get into the news of the day, and then I want to pick up where I left off yesterday and continue on that train of thought. So let's just knock a few of these things out real quick. The daily headlines. Of course, we all learned yesterday that President Trump has halted U.S. funding of the World Health Organization while they do an investigation into the response and the overall, just the way the World Health Organization handled the entire pandemic. And it seems awfully suspicious, let's say, the way that they handled that. They seem to have been running cover for China. And yes, we provide, I think it's what, 30 or 40% of the total funding of the WHO. And this is what we get. So yes, I fully support pulling that funding. In fact, I pull funding from all globalist NWO organizations. We don't need to be funding any of those things. They did absolutely nothing to help anybody in this deal. In fact, probably the biggest failing from the very get-go was the World Health Organization, who appeared to be on the payroll of the Communist Chinese. Now, I expect that Trump's going to take a lot of flack from the left-wing corporate media and the demo commies, and they will lose big in this fight. This is a fight. If they want to die on this hill, go ahead and let them. But they will absolutely die on this hill, and they will get slaughtered. Because regardless of how much propaganda they try to spin, the majority of people in this country know exactly what happened here with China, the Communist Chinese. And we know that they knew about this in early November. Then we get the World Health Organization coming out and making a statement at the end of the year saying, well, you know, we feel pretty confident at this point that this can't be spread from human to human. They knew that was bullshit, and they continue to add more bullshit on top of that. And then we find out the closeness that Tedros has with the Communist Chinese. And pretty soon you get a pretty clear picture of exactly what happened. People are not that stupid, and especially because so many people are now sitting home watching, paying attention like they never had time to before, and they're learning a lot about why they're in the predicament that they're in right now. Many of them, particularly small business owners, their businesses are lost. Maybe some of them can recover, but many of them won't. People losing their incomes, people having a lot of personal difficulties, not to mention the paranoia of possibly getting contact with this virus by a friend or family member. I mean, there's a lot of problems here. People are pretty engaged in what's going on, and there's no way, unless you're living under a rock, that you could be where we are today and not know the literally criminal nature of the way that this was handled by the World Health Organization, and specifically how it was handled by Communist China. So, yes, let the Democrats and the left-wing media go ahead and attack Trump on this. They will lose bad. They will die, and they will die a bloody death on this hill. Cutting off funding to the WHO while they investigate exactly what happened. Exactly. Well, it looks like we learned yesterday that Barack Hussein Obama has endorsed Biden, and he did it on one of these split-screen video broadcasts with Burisma Joe. And not only that, he said that he'll be looking forward to getting out on the campaign trail to campaign with Biden. Oh, man. Oh, that's not going to age well. I can tell you right now. I'd be surprised if he does. That's maybe just malarkey. But maybe he actually means it. If Obama goes out and campaigns for Biden, he's going to really regret it. He is really going to regret it. And quite honestly, if Biden's paying any attention to the Durham investigation, you probably don't want to get very close to Obama if you're Biden. Both these guys are literally toxic. But yeah, let him go. So he's endorsed Biden. He really didn't have much choice. Yeah, like coming out and endorsing Biden after Bernie and everyone else has basically discontinued their campaign. Not exactly a gutsy move, but, you know, I kind of wonder if he's been taking a lot of heat since Trump in that press conference last week said, hey, why do you think Obama, what's Obama know that we don't know? Why hasn't he endorsed Biden? And I think that probably got under Obama's skin. He probably had a lot of people call him on the phone and say, yeah, Trump's kind of right. Why haven't you endorsed Biden? I mean, if we're going to win this thing, you got to get out there and support Biden. And, Obama, he's in a terrible position because he knows that Joe doesn't have the stuff. In fact, he knows that Joe's likely to get blown out, embarrassed, if he even makes it through the process. And most people, I'd say it's a 50-50 shot whether or not he can even, stay viable. I mean, he's got to make it to November. He's got to make it to November. Look how bad things are right now. And we know what's coming down the road. And Biden is involved in that as well. So, yeah, Barack Hussein Obama knows that it's a very, very risky proposition to get behind Biden, but he really doesn't have any choice. He's the former Democratic president. This was his VP. He really doesn't have much choice. I mean, really, pressure-wise, I'm sure he tried not to endorse Biden, but I'm sure he had enough people around him and said, man, you got to. You have no choice. Yeah, you may end up being embarrassed by all this. It may turn around and blow up in your face, but you got no choice. We got to beat Trump. And you're the former president. He was your VP. You've got to endorse him. So I don't really think Barack Hussein Obama had much choice, because if he did, he certainly wouldn't be endorsing Biden. He knows what's coming. He knows exactly what's coming. So we'll be watching to see when he supposedly goes out to campaign for Biden. We'll watch and see exactly how much passion he actually puts into it, and exactly what words he uses, and exactly how he handles this. I wouldn't expect to see him doing too many in-person appearances with Biden. I think he might go out and campaign for Democrats. I think he might go out and campaign on ideas and this and that. But I bet he'll try to keep a pretty safe distance between him and Biden. And I think he'll stop short of a real full-throated endorsement. He's probably hoping that people will forget or not even notice that he actually gave this endorsement to Biden yesterday. I mean, Biden's going to forget by tomorrow morning. So maybe that's what Obama's hoping for, that Biden will forget. Yeah, and he probably will. So it's a bad move. I can tell you right now, Obama is going to regret gratefully endorsing Biden. And you know what? Biden may regret the endorsement from Obama. Let's just watch and see. Well, Joe DeGeneva back on the radio yesterday on another radio program, pretty much doubling down on what he said last Friday. Let's go through just a segment, an excerpt of what he said on his most recent appearance. Very similar to what he said before, but with a little more detail. So let's go ahead and look at this. So DeGeneva says, quote, that CIA officers, and he's talking about these CIA officers who are part of this National Intelligence Council. This National Intelligence Council, which we now know is also one and the same with this multi-agency task force. We've already named some of the people on it. It includes Eric Sharamella. This National Intel Council, of course, falls under the ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, but it's mostly staffed with CIA people. And these are the people who did the basic rough draft of the ICA. And of course, we know the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, is so very, very critical in Durham's investigation, because it was the ICA that was used to carry out the coup, meaning the appointment of Uncle Bob the Executioner. It was used to justify all the things that they did after May of 2017, whether it was Papadopoulos, the frame-ups of him, Manafort, their investigations into Carter Page, the two FISA warrants that have now been found to have been illegitimate. One of those occurred under Mueller, one of them with Rodenstein right after he came in. So it was the ICA that really was the document that really was supposed to, I guess you could say, provided the cover for them to do all the things that they did, or gave them the excuse, gave them the legal justification for doing all the things they did. And now we know the entire thing was bullshit. We know the ICA was largely based on the dossier. Brennan, Comey, Brennan, Comey, and Clapper, all three lied about that. McCabe's the only one who basically told the truth about that when questioned in front of Congress. So that's why Durham is dialing in on the ICA, because it is the document that was the justification, the legal justification for all that was done after May of 2017, when they appointed Uncle Bob the executioner, and the Mueller coup plot, and everything that followed, all based on the ICA. Even the memos that Rodenstein drafted to allow Uncle Bob to investigate the things he investigated, all were based on the ICA. So Durham has learned this a long time ago, and that's why he's now, as DeGeneva is about to tell you, these people who work at this National Intelligence Council, who were the ones who did the rough draft. Remember, they're doing a rough draft, okay? But they're not the ones who cultivated the information. The information is given to them, and then they take the information, and then they put together their assessment or what have you. Then it goes to the chiefs, and then of course Peter's been stroking us, had his say in it, and then McCabe and Comey on the FBI side. Everybody had a little piece of it, but all the information flowed into these people at the National Intelligence Council, and that's who the people are that Durham had interviewed. And some of them have been subpoenaed, some of them have already testified in front of a grand jury. And you can bet that they didn't put their head on the chopping block for Brennan and Clapper. So DeGeneva says that these CIA officers, these ones who were a part of this National Intelligence Council, have been questioned. Brennan is the main focus of the investigation, and that's probably because of what he learned from these individuals in the National Intelligence Council, and that Durham is looking at the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment. He's asking lots of questions about it, what Brennan did, and what he asked other people to do. Durham's also looking at in the case of Brennan and possibly Comey and others as well, a charge of abuse of power. There's many charges. Greg Jarrett has laid out probably a half a dozen different charges, and there's more. He said if he had some time, he'd come up with some more. But John Durham is, according to DeGeneva, is really focused looking at it from the aspect of an abuse of power, because Brennan used the resources of the CIA to illegally create a plot to either falsely lead FBI officials into a scheme or to conspire with FBI officials to deny certain people their civil rights. Well, absolutely, to DeGeneva's point, that's absolutely what he did, but it's the former, not the latter. Now I know that Comey and FBI and DOJ side is going to say, oh, well, the CIA duped us. Well, we believe the CIA. I mean, they gave us this information, we acted on it, and so, the CIA duped us. No, I don't think so. No more than there's a Russian, no more than the story we got a few days back that it was a, Russian disinformation campaign. All that's total bullshit. And we know that because Peter's been stroking us. The FBI, the CIA, were working together on this plot. It wasn't like they were in different lanes doing different things. All through, going all the way back to even the very beginning, before Operation Crossfire Hurricane, back in the spring of 2016. Those were FBI people who were trying to, who were working on setting up. Halper was working for the FBI, not the CIA. And all these other people that came in around Operation Crossfire Hurricane, they're all FBI. The idea that the FBI was duped by Brennan, I mean, and how could they be duped? I mean, they're the FBI. The CIA gives them information. What are they supposed to do with it? They're supposed to analyze it, investigate it, and see if it's legit. Peter's been stroking us was on Brennan's team. He was like the FBI. He's like, so it's like, it was the FBI and CIA working together. The idea that the FBI was being duped by the CIA is preposterous. And they can try to make that argument, but it's just, there's too much evidence already in the public domain that proves that can't possibly be true. Can't possibly be true. No way that the FBI was duped. They were up to this thing, into this thing, up to their eyeballs the whole time. Maybe they can try to, I don't know, maybe they can try to sell that to the media. But Durham, I'm telling you, is not going to buy it. Durham's not going to buy that for a minute. And if they try that, he'll blow them up right now. Too much evidence to prove otherwise. And another thing, Geneva commented on these 29 FISAs on these American citizens that we know that the FISA judge, Boasberg, has given the FBI 60 days. This was about a week and a half ago. 60 days to produce the names of these 29. And Joe DeGeneva is thinking, yeah, well, I bet you some of them will turn out to be Republicans, probably adversaries or opponents of the Democrats, of Barack Obama, maybe personally. Let me tell you what, here's my thoughts on that. All 29, and not some of them, all of them, every single one of them. And that's just these. Remember, this was just a sampling. Just a sampling. There were hundreds and hundreds of FISAs during the time that Obama was president. They just took a random look at some of them and found every single one they looked at there was a problem with. These are all FISAs on American citizens. Do you think Obama was out getting FISAs on his friends? Do you think he got a FISA on Soros, the Rotten Reverend? Any of these people? I don't think so. Epstein? Any of these people? Weinstein? Any of these people, you think? I don't think so. You're going to find out that every single one of these 29 people that they got these FISAs on were opponents, Republicans, conservatives, whatever you want to call them, political opponents of Barry O. And I think we're going to find that some of them may have been even connected to the Trump campaign. Could even find out Trump himself. I'm not sure. These were random. But I bet if they looked at every one, they'd find a lot more. But yeah, that's my thought. And we are going to find out who these people are. Yeah, oh yeah. And believe me, Durham is probably already knows now. Probably as soon as this came up, Durham probably went, really? All 29 of those turned out to be fraudulent? Yeah. Well, he doesn't have to wait for the FBI to produce the names. He can probably go get that information right now. He has that legal authority given to him by Attorney General Barr. So Durham has probably already discovered the 29. And remember, he's had several conversations with Mike Rogers of the NSA. And Mike Rogers was actually looking at who all these people were. Devin Nunes went over and looked at the unmaskings of all these people, so he knows who a lot of these people are. And he suggested it was people in the political realm, Republicans, people in the Trump campaign, maybe Trump himself. My oh my. I'll tell you who's sweating right now. I'll tell you who's really sweating right now is Clapper and Comey and Strzok and McCabe, because, once Durham gets his evidence together and he's got Brennan by the short hairs, he's going to get Brennan in the hot seat. And Brennan's going to have two choices. Now, he can lie or tell the truth. Now, he lied to Congress. He lies when he goes on TV, but he can't lie to Durham. Durham will spank him and then put him in jail, and he knows it. He's a target. He knows that. So if you're Clapper and Comey and Strzok and McCabe, you have to be shaking in your shoes. Would you want your situation to be riding on John Brennan? Because I can assure you, John Brennan is not taking the fall for any of those guys. He's going to play it off and put it all off on everyone else if he can, or he might even just turn. Who knows? But you would not want to be any of those other people I just mentioned counting on John Brennan to pull your chestnuts out of the fire. It's not going to work out very well. Well, as you know, I had mentioned that the next coup plot by the Bug-Eyed Fool and Madame Botox is going to be this little investigation they're doing into Trump's handling of the coronavirus, where they're going to try to come up with a coup plot, or at least was at the very least to damage Trump as much as they can with black voters, because they've seen the polls and they know that Trump is. The last poll has him at 20% with blacks. If he takes 20% of the black vote, the Democrats may never win an election again. I mean, that would be almost 3 times what any Republican ever gets of the black vote. That would be biblical, So yes, they're definitely going to attack him there, and they're going to try to show where somehow he and his administration did something and the way they handled coronavirus, which purposely did harm to blacks and minorities. So yesterday we get this article from Oprah Winfrey, where Oprah says that the coronavirus is taking out black Americans. Taking out black Americans. Yes, indeed. There you go. And there'll be more stories like this to feed this narrative. They're going to go ahead and get the frenzy started around it because they've already been given the word that this is what Schiff's working on. And so you're going to start hearing more and more and more stories popping up now every day about how Trump's handling the coronavirus was purposely meant to harm blacks and minorities. And I think that the angle that that Oprah's taking is that because blacks work in so many industries that are still open and they're still exposed, that they have a higher risk. Plus, apparently, they have more health issues with asthma, with obesity, and various other things that make them more prime targets. And that and that Trump is not really addressing these specific concerns. So they're going to try to paint it as Trump being negligent, for sure, with that question mark. But could it be more than just negligence? And that's the road they're going to go down, so prepare yourself for it. Just get ready. It's not going to work, but they're going to try it because it's all they've got. Now, I want to move on from where I was yesterday and just get to a few things I wasn't able to get to. I was wanting to get to this yesterday, but I ran out of time. So I just want to kind of stand on that same track of the Durham investigation and the overall Spygate coup. First, as I get into this portion of it, I'm going to start with a question. So listen very carefully to this question and think about it for a second. I'll read it twice, and then we'll kind of go through it for a second. Think very carefully about this question. If Comey, Brennan, Clapper, and the Obama administration were told that Chrissy Steele was being given Russian disinformation while he was working as a confidential human source for the FBI and at the same time working for the Rotten Reverend Clinton campaign, then why didn't the FBI open an investigation into the Clinton campaign and Christopher Steele? If Comey, Brennan, Clapper, Obama, and the Obama administration were told Steele was being given Russian disinformation while he was working as a confidential human source for the FBI and for the Rotten Reverend Clinton campaign, then why didn't the FBI open an investigation into the Clinton campaign and Christopher Steele? So we learned a couple of days ago from these declassified footnotes, and I don't buy this narrative, by the way, but since that's the narrative they're pushing, let's go ahead and roll with it. If in fact, and we know that they did, we know from the declassified notes that the FBI, the CIA, they all knew all the way up to the tippy top, Jimmy the Weasel, Mr. Potato Head, Peter's been stroking us, the whole crew, and McCabe, they all knew because we saw it in the footnotes. They were told, hey, by FBI analysts who had looked at it, hey, we think that this stuff that Steele's getting is Russian disinformation. So if they were told back in December of 2016, this is before Comey goes and briefs Trump on the dossier. It's before the release of the dossier. It's before it's just after 2 months after the first Carter Page FISA, before the second, third, and fourth renewals. At that time, they're told that the information Steele's getting, that these FBI analysts believe that it's Russian disinformation. This is the FBI's own analyst telling their senior higher-ups, hey, we think that this stuff that Steele's putting out is Russian disinformation. Yet they never investigated. They never investigated. They never go and investigate Steele. In fact, they're paying him as a confidential human source. He's being paid by the FBI and the Clinton campaign. They never investigate either. What's the Clinton campaign doing, working with these Russians to get Russian disinformation that that's being given to Steele, who's working for the Clinton campaign, and they're using this to put out this dossier, which is supposed to hurt Trump, and yet they're not going to investigate any of that? If the entire point of their investigation was Russian interference in the election, well, there you go. There's the FBI's own analyst saying, here you go. Here's the Russian meddling in the election. They're giving, the Russians have a disinformation campaign going on. They're giving this bad information to this Christopher Steele guy who's working for the Clinton campaign to do a smear campaign on Trump. They're giving him disinformation, and that's how they're meddling. One way, they're meddling in the election. Yet no investigation whatsoever into Steele, the Clinton campaign, or this part of the so-called Russian interference in the election. That is something that is simply unexplainable. It is unexplainable. There's no way that Comey or Clapper or Brennan or any of these guys can go in front of a grand jury, go in front of anyone, and explain that. There is no explanation for it. Instead, they go out and investigate the very person that they were just told is being the target of the disinformation. That looks really, really bad. It looks fatal. No way you can wiggle off that hook, man. You can't wiggle off that hook because it's the FBI's own analyst. And you can't wiggle off that hook because they can't say that they weren't advised they were. We know that that information made it to Comey and Strzok and McCabe and likely the higher-ups at the DOJ and, of course, Brennan and Clapper. They all knew this. They were all given this information, and they did not act on it. In fact, they did just the opposite. And that's one reason. Now, here's another reason why that they didn't do any investigation. Well, it's because that they knew that Christy Steele had only one real source who told the FBI that he had no network of contacts, just friends who were shooting the breeze over drinks. They knew that too. And who was Steele's source? Well, we know who Steele's source was because he told Kathleen Kvalik. And it was Stefan Halper's good buddy, Trubnikov. Vyacheslav Trubnikov. That's the name he gave Kathleen Kvalik. And what did we find out when we did a little bit of a deep dive into Trubnikov? Well, we found out that he's a good old buddy of Stefan Halper. And that in 2016, on at least 2 occasions, Halper invited him over to the London Center and had him participate in some of those seminars. So think about that. Steele's primary source is Trubnikov, and he is, monkeying around, hanging around with Halper. It sure looked like to me that Halper was giving Trubnikov the dirt, and Trubnikov was giving it to Steele, or to Confusion GPS. See how that works? This thing was, just as I've said more than a year ago, home cooking. It was an inside job. There were no Russians. And what Russians there were not Russians working for Putin or the Russian government or anything like that. They're Russians who live in the States, have lived in the States for decades. They're a globalist. They travel around with all these people. And they have a lot of American contacts. And it's likely that these so-called Russians were being fed by rogue FBI and CIA people connected to FBI and CIA. They were being fed this information, and it was being fed right into the pipeline for Christopher Steele Confusion GPS. Home cooking, my friends. I believe that's what we're going to find. And then, of course, you've got Joe Pientka, the agent who we're not allowed to name. And, of course, he was saying that Milian was a key dossier source. Milian denies that completely. And he was, of course, at the time that Pientka is talking about Milian being a source, he knows that Sergei Milian himself is under FBI investigation. He's always under FBI investigation because he's always involved in a lot of shady financial deals. Not because he's a Russian agent or intelligence or anything like that. He's into con. He's a con man. And, of course, Pientka and the FBI knew that before they got the first FISA, before Comey briefed Trump, before the FBI interviewed Steele's subsource, they knew all about Milian and knew that he was basically a bit player. Even he said, I'm not really an intelligence source for Christopher Steele. I know him. I've had conversations with him, but nothing I gave him what I consider intelligence, or nor did I ever tell him it was intelligence. I have no affiliation with the Russian intelligence or Russian government at all. I've been living in the United States for 20 years. Have no deal. I have no friends in the current, Putin administration or anything like that. So they knew it was all bullshit. Just another distraction is all this really is. To try to give us a smoke and mirrors campaign, keep us distracted with a lot of these players to make it sound like there was this big complex wave of Russian actors and Russian intelligence people and people working for the Russians, pumping all. There was none of that going on. This was a total 100% inside job. The Clinton campaign working with their allies in the FBI and the CIA to frame Trump. And when that didn't work, they went for the coup. That's what it's all about. And I believe John Durham is going to prove that here in the relatively near future. Now, we learned a couple of new things in the last 24 hours. The most recent Washington Examiner article by Daniel Chaitlin. And these are some things that have not really, they're things that I suspected but have never been actually confirmed, but could have been confirmed a long time ago, because this information is coming from statements that were made 2 or 3 years ago that the rest of us overlooked or didn't know about. So here is something we just learned, some things we just learned from this most recent Washington Examiner article. I think you're going to be very interested in this. And this goes back to the origins of how the dossier came about as in regards to the Clinton campaign and Confusion GPS and the FBI. So Robbie Mook authorized, he's the one, he admits this. This is from a transcript that's posted, there's a linked transcript to this article, and I read the linked transcript. This is Robbie Mook being interviewed on TV saying this. Robbie Mook authorized the hiring of Mark Elias, who was the head of Perkins Coie Political Law Group, and he was the general counsel for the Rotten Reverend Clinton campaign in 2016. Robbie Mook hired Elias to hire an outside firm, that would be Confusion GPS, to dig up dirt on Trump's connections with Russia in 2016. So you see, it wasn't that they just hired Confusion GPS. No. They hired Confusion GPS to prove Trump's connections to Russia. The Clinton campaign hired Confusion GPS and this law firm, Mark Elias, to prove the narrative that they wanted to sell. It wasn't like Confusion GPS did this investigation, Steele did this investigation, and they find these things. No. They were hired from day one to prove that there was a Trump-Russia connection by the Clinton campaign, by Clinton's campaign manager, Robbie Mook. And we got this from a transcript from an interview he did with Anderson Pooper on November the 3rd of 2017 at 10 o'clock p.m. Mook also said that Elias was receiving information from Confusion GPS about the research into Trump and Russia in 2016, and that Elias periodically briefed the Clinton campaign. And he says, Mook says, I'm proud that we were able to assemble some of the research that brought this to light. Well, I'm glad you're proud of being part of putting together that smear campaign in the coup. Maybe Mr. Durham will want to have a talk to you. He also, let's also not forget, it's also in his article, that the FBI told Christopher Steele in October 2016 that they were looking at Carter Page, Papadopoulos, Michael Flynn, and Manafort. And then Steele then passed this information on to Confusion GPS. Confusion GPS was paid $50,000 per month by the Rotten Reverend Clinton campaign, while the Clinton campaign was paying Perkins Coie $12 million for their overall work. And let's not forget that the FBI in Italy also passed along classified information to Christopher Steele, which he then passed on to Confusion GPS. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you guys. Bye.